morning, everybody. They said they had a yellow alert in Delhi for these days, supposed to be very cold. We're lucky to have bright sun, great weather, great audience. Thank you, Tulika. Thank you, Ajay Tambe, for hosting this conference. Hosting this conference at this time of the year in Delhi is definitely a very challenging job. You know, flights get delayed. There are a lot of other exigencies that one has to look up. And when Ajay said, we are looking at a lecture which talks about innovation in the future, it was very challenging. Innovation for a country where we say the next decade is India's decade. Talking about innovation in the light of that backdrop is very challenging. I've tried to put forward a presentation, but it's more like throwing a challenge. It's not a presentation. It's a pledge that we need to take at the end of the day. And it has certain areas which are not very pleasant to talk about. Because Winston Churchill said, the entire growth on this planet has been because of unpopular decisions. Time and again, one gets to see that there is this inkling between India and China. China is at a $1 billion metric tons of steel. India needs to be at 300 million tons by 2030. Great numbers, great numbers. The question is, how will India shape up and be different than China? India has always been different. And I'm sure if we wake up to this call and understand what real innovations lie ahead of us and what great opportunities lie ahead of us, I'm sure in every means, steel industry will see a very bright future in India. This was probably in 2022, probably August, September, I was speaking in one of the steel conferences hosted by Metallogic in Delhi. It was a conference which was talking about support that the steel industry needs to give to engineering exports. And this was April 2022. And I said, are we really serious about exports? My lecture is on the YouTube, by the way. I said, are we really serious about exports? And it was 3 weeks after my lecture that the Federal Dispensation of India imposed the export duty on steel. I got 1 million calls. They said, how did you know this was coming? I said, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to make 2 and 2 to 4. What is it that we can do today? And to define what innovation is, I like to tell a story. So ma'am, don't start my time yet. The presentation will start after this story. Bangladesh is prone to famine. Bangladesh is prone to a lot of storms. So when storms come, a lot of people, poor people, lose their homes, lose their livelihoods. It was such a storm that came in 1983 that a lot of people lost a lot of things they had. In a small village near Dhaka, 166 people went to this person called Professor Muhammad Yunus. He was a professor of economics at Dhaka University. And they said, we've lost everything in this storm. Can we get a $25 loan? If we get a $25 loan, maybe we can save our lives. We can save the lives of our families. Professor Muhammad Yunus was a professor of economics. He said, no problem, this is no daunting job. He took those 166 poor people to the local bank. It was the best and the biggest commercial bank of Bangladesh. And he said, look, I believe you're in the business of lending. Because you're in the business of lending, so I bought prospective 166 customers to your doorstep. Do you mind giving them $25 loans? And you don't need to give me a thank you card. They did their risk analysis and said, well, these guys are too risky to give loans to, and refused. And he said, what is this? Why wouldn't they get loans? So because they came from his village, he gave each of them a $25 loan. 3 things happened. First, he got his money back with 10% interest. He made a lot of money. He said, wow, what is this? Number two, he realized that the corporate world has divided this planet in two parts. The population of the planet is 7.5 billion people. And this is divided between 5 billion and 2.5 billion. 2.5 billion rich who can consume what they want, and 5 billion poor who are told what you can consume and what you cannot consume. And he said, in theory of economics, you succeed only when you can convert the non-consumers to consumers. That's when we say the per capita steel consumption in India is here, whereas the per capita steel consumption in North America is here. What we are not talking about is how to consume, how to convert the non-consumers of steel to steel. He said, I will start a commercial bank. And I will do exactly opposite to what the most successful commercial bank in Bangladesh does. They have fancy branches in cities. I'll have my operations in rural areas. They give loans to men. I will give loans to women. They give loans in excess of $1,000. I will give a loan of maximum $25. And this is how we started the Grameen Bank. Grameen stands for rural, for village, in 1983. And for the last 44 years, Grameen Bank has dispensed loans in excess of $16 billion in increments of $25 each. Make no mistakes, the only year Grameen Bank did not make money was 1983, the day they were founded. Professor Muhammad Yunus got a Nobel Prize in 2004 for what we call a microfinance revolution. I asked him, and this is, I'm narrating a story because I spent on a transatlantic flight 8 hours with him. I asked him, what was your dream when you did this? He said, my dream is to eradicate poverty. I want to create a museum of poverty, so that 50 years down the line, when there's a child who asks, what is poverty? I should be able to take him to that museum and show him what poverty is. Can we dream in this country? And this is all my presentation is all about. What are we dreaming so that we can create a museum of success for steel industry in India? And tomorrow when someone says, well, how was steel produced and how did you convert these consumers, non-consumers to consumers, we probably can take them to that museum. I asked Professor Muhammad Yunus, what is your latest venture? He said, well, I've left Grameen Bank and I have a small experiment. And the experiment is, there are a lot of beggars in Bangladesh. And they beg. And there's no surety how much money they make when they beg. So I went to one of these marketplaces and I caught hold of 500 beggars and told them, I'll give you $10. You go and buy some groceries, flowers, milk, bread, anything that people need in the morning, in the daytime, and go and sell. You go to beg each and every house. Why don't you become a salesman too? Guess, in 6 months, how many beggars he enrolled? Any guesses? 500,000. Of 500,000 beggars, 250,000 finally said, well, selling is not our cup of tea, begging is our cup of tea, we'll remain beggars. A quarter of them said, look, we'll be salesmen because now we make money and we have more respect. And we can go and deliver groceries because we get this leveraging from you. And the balance said, well, some houses are good for begging and some houses are good for selling. So we'll pick and choose what we do. So it doesn't take for a person to become a consumer of steel to go to college. It's not a propaganda that we can do on a digital platform to consume and say that non-consumer will start consuming steel more. The question is, what is the future? If we did not anticipate export duty coming in India, if we did not anticipate windfall taxes on oil and gas coming to India, I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, in 2 to 5 years, you will experience a tsunami of such decisions coming our way. And if you're not prepared, the pandemic taught us, it will be reset to abnormality. And this is what my presentation is all about. Let us take a pledge at the end of the presentation. Coated metal current scenario, and future tense. What do we do in coated metal? Typically, I'll talk about flat steel. Flat steel, galvanized, galvalume, coated with metal, coated with paint, what we call pre-painted steel. It's a great industry, but if you look at statistics, pre-painted steel industry has grown by 200%, galvanizing industry has gone by 20%. So definitely the future is pre-painted steel. Why is it pre-painted steel? Why do we say? So the agenda, as I say, I'll divide in 4 parts. The first agenda will be very, very blunt. Question is, why more zinc? Zinc is a natural resource. Aluminum is a natural resource. Nickel is a natural resource. What are we doing here? What are we going to tell our future generation? If we drink all the water in the rivers, if we cut all the trees in our forest, if we leave for the new generation nothing to thrive upon, is that what we call achievement? And take this very seriously. If you do not, in 2 to 5 years, there will be a brown tax imposed on steel industries, and the biggest sufferers will be India and China. Because all that matters today in the world is India and China. We are on the consumptive side of products, and if we do not change our thoughts, there will be absolute calamity. What was the price of a solar power generated electricity 10 years back? Any guesses? The government of India used to tender solar power projects. 10 years back, what was the price of electricity per unit? Any guess? It was in excess of 11 rupees a unit. What is the price today? It is lower than 2 rupees a unit today. What changed? Does the conversion or the yield factor of a silicon germanium cell that converts sun rays into electricity, did that explode? Of course not. It's the ecosystem. So make no mistakes, steel and cement are the biggest carbon emitters in the world. They are the single most disrespected industry in the world. Like it or not, we are in the middle of it. And if we do not make innovations today, and this is the right time we can make innovations, and why should we not? Let's be very sure about it. The first agenda will be why more zinc. Second agenda will be green steel, necessity or myth. Third will be digital printing. And the fourth will be a pledge we take. We start with why more zinc. There is a thought process which has embedded in us, which says the more zinc we apply, the more corrosion resistant steel will be. How true is that in today's context? This thought process was a thought process of 1960s, when technology was not anywhere close to where it is today. Technology was not even in its infancy. Why does this thought process apply today? Because the steel that we make is a red steel. The steel that we make today bleeds on natural resources. So are we filling our coffers on something that is absolutely naturally criminal in nature? Is a question I want all of you to ask yourself. It's a very simple question. So the science of reducing coated steel corrosion. We are in the business of protection. Whether we coat zinc, galvalume, pre-painted steel, we are in the business of protection. Like a king protects a kingdom, a mother protects a child, a CEO protects an organization. Similarly, coatings of different type protect steel. So essentially, the flat products that we use today are nothing but as a business of protection. Make no mistakes about it. And what is the analogy? If you were the king of Saudi Arabia, and you had the largest oil reserves under your command, how would you see oil? Would you see oil as something that generates revenue? Or would you see oil as something that gives you strength to ensure that you get groceries, milk, bread, safety and security for your kingdom? How would you view oil? Protection analogy, a king protects a kingdom. A mother protects her children. A father protects his family. A CEO protects his organization. And coatings and paints protect steel. Make no mistakes, we put coatings in steel because they protect steel. And where did this come from? This came from a series of necessity-driven exercises started in 1880s when the first rail line was established from Pittsburgh to New York. It was called the Central Rail Line. It was owned by a great entrepreneur. And because it was called the Central Line, out of philanthropy, he donated all his profits. That's why in New York we have a Central Station. That's how it's called. In World War I, we had, by that time, because of the Industrial Revolution in the North, Andrew Carnegie mastered the art of making hot-rolled rail lines. Hot-rolled steel was first made in the United States of America, make no mistakes. This was in late 1800s. And that was used to make rail lines, and that's how the Industrial Revolution started. By World War II, we had a lot of flat steel which was not coated, not protected, and that is when came the requirement of coating steel, and Louis Galva invented the cathodic protection that zinc imparts to steel, and in the honor of Louis Galva, Sir Richardson named the process galvanizing. Galva is not a Spanish or a Latin name for zinc. Louis Galva discovered the process, that's why it's called galvanizing. But what happened after that? Once World War II, we had paints coming in, all kinds of primers coming in, and the whole process started. So let's take 60 seconds to understand how do we paint steel and what it takes to paint steel that gives you a 20, 30, 40 years warranty, a product that is more superior in nature. So what happens when you put the paint on the coil in an oven? This is exactly what happens. For the first seconds, mind well, there is this seconds here at the bottom x-axis, and we've got the temperature on the y-axis. And if you look at this, it keeps on happening. Different things happen at different temperatures. And if I put it all together, this is what happens in flat 15 seconds. Paint is put on a coil in flat 15 seconds. I will not go into the nitty-gritties of what happens when. It's not important. But in 15 seconds, we put paint on steel that is responsible for physical properties, chemical properties, weathering properties, performance properties, forming properties for the next 40 years. This is how complicated the technology is. And if you compare these technologies to other technologies, of course, if you look at coil coating does about in 15 seconds, 2,500 square feet per minute. Powder coating does in 10 minutes, 100 square feet per minute. Auto refinish do in 5 minutes, 100 square feet. So if you look at time versus performance and risk, there is humongous risk, humongous performance that has to be attributed to a pre-painted steel process. This discussion is very important. Why? Because this leads to this. In World War II, zinc hot dip galvanizing became a standard. I'm not going to the process of in how many ways we can put zinc on steel, and etc. By 1937, people started putting primer because primer added zinc as a corrosion inhibitor. By 1954, we had zinc, nickel, and other alloys that came in, that started using for the aviation industry. By 1959, we had top coats that were invented. So we started putting a primer, and then we started putting top coats. And finally, by 1980s, we have the fluorinated hydrocarbons, the PVDFs, the FEV, which came in, and they gave a lot of protective strength. Now tell me, when you buy color-coated steel, what should you look at first? Should you look at the quality of paint, or should you straight away look at the quantity of zinc? For example, a paint is available for $2 a kg, a paint is available for $10 a kg. Which paint would you want on top? And tell me, sun rays travel from 93 million miles to strike a planet called Earth. It is called collimated rays. The UV, invisible, between the 250 and the 275 are responsible for most damage. The paint takes the brunt of this damage. The zinc is sleeping inside. So when you look at pre-painted steel, what should you be looking at? And make no mistakes. If you want to make more green steel, you cannot keep on devouring this planet for zinc, aluminum, nickel, etc. This has to stop. Why is Tesla so great? All automotive companies put together, Honda, Toyota, GM, Chrysler, Mercedes, BMW, everything, $650 billion. Tesla, standalone valuation, $800 billion. Ever wondered why? Not because it's an electric vehicle, it's a myth. I was there because the Tesla production facility in Fremont is about 200 yards from our office. So we do interact with them on a community basis. When Tesla S model was launched, Elon said, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the safest car on the planet. Volvo used to have that standard, the safest car. He said, welcome to the safest car on the planet, and he demonstrated a video. Tesla has set standards which are not available in the automotive industry. Automotive industry is revamping standards to incorporate Tesla because they were always 110% on everything. It's not about Tesla being an electric car. It's about Tesla being an innovator. We have to innovate. So if we have to innovate, and people say corrosion is linked to zinc, that applies when you're buying a bare galvanized, bare galvalume sheet. But when you have a primer on top of it, when you have a top coat on top of it, when you have an anti-fingerprint on top of it, what are you buying? Are you buying zinc? Ever thought about it? That tomorrow, should there be a steel graded on class of green, where do you stand? I'm not saying applying paint is a green process. It's got a lot of solvents too. But then we got to attack one problem at a time. The myth is there is a lot of requirement of anti-corrosion properties in pre-painted steel. I'm calling it a myth because this is truly a myth. Let me demonstrate how. Metal coatings give some protection, how long metal will last, and the price impact of metal on scarcity. Paint gives maximum protection. Should paint be maximized and metal minimized? What have we done is, BlueScope came forward and said, oh, 120 GSM minimum galvalume. Did we ask them, excuse me, can you increase the top coat from 18 microns to 24 microns? Can you give me a comparison how it works? And they would say, because pre-painted steel gets scratched, so zinc, aluminum, or zinc is important. It's false. We have hard coatings that do not scratch. We have coating. So how does corrosion take place? You put a roof, you put a pre-painted steel, and there is a natural phenomena of accumulation of dust, accumulation of leaves, accumulation of anything that the weather might throw away. Now, if those things accumulate and somehow they become porous, then it's called water stagnation on steel. And they say water stagnates on steel, it will penetrate through the paint and affect the steel, so you need zinc. Well, we have something we call chat-stat coatings now. Chat-stat coatings do not allow anything to stand. Chat-stat coatings have revolutionized the world. So in North America, we have more sales of PVDF than anything else. It's more expensive? Of course. People need cost innovation. But the world is entirely moving. Are we thinking about it? Are we changing our specifications? Are we telling our supply chain management, excuse me, we have to change our lens. This lens is 40 years old. So let me share with you some data of United States. It's National Atmospheric Deposition Program. So what is the red? Red is the pH value of North America in 1985. pH anything less than 4.1 is red, so probably on the East Coast till the Midwest, it's red because most of the steel industry was in that part of the world. There was nothing in the west side of the United States. So you find it green. What is corrosion? Corrosion is sulfur dioxide, nitric oxide, pollutants that mix with the nature and cause acid rain, sulfuric acid, nitric acid. So is this planet becoming more greener? Are we having more SO2s, more NOs, more COs, or are we having less? Because all the mindset that we created so far of increasing zinc was based on 1980s when the levels of pollution was different. Our awareness of society, of social corporate responsibility was minimum. So go through this. This is the data which goes from 1985 to probably 2015 and see for yourself how the climate has changed. These are all the years, and then we have how the whole thing is changing. Let me repeat this once again because this is truly shocking. And this is data. This was 1985. We had acid rains. We had a lot of requirement of anti-corrosivity on the east part of US. West was where it was. Look what happened in 2014. Is corrosion our biggest problem? No, it's not. Because every industrial establishment, every corporation, every individual has become more socially aware of his responsibilities. Pollution norms have increased. So why is it that we are still devouring the planet and getting more non-renewable resources like zinc, aluminum, nickel, and coating it when we put paint on it? That is why. Why more zinc? And now let me take you to some very interesting these videos are supposed to be playing, but they're not playing. I'm so sorry. How do I play these videos? My laptop, Mac wouldn't be connected, I'm sorry. But these are videos, and these videos probably show why that is not so. These videos have been live taken where I could have showed you if they were running, that if you throw anything on pre-painted steel, it will not stick. It will just roll off. Water falls on it and it will roll off. If we get the videos right somehow, I might be able to play them. So that's the first presentation, why more zinc. It's a very bold step to take. There's a huge zinc lobby. They invest millions of dollars in lobbying for increasing the usage of zinc. But make no mistakes, these lobbies don't run your organizations. And when the export tax came, who suffered? The lobbies or you. So unless you decide that this innovation is absolutely important, and we have more technologies that can help you overcome this. The second is green steel necessity or myth. We have brown steel because we do a lot of carbon emissions. So green steel necessity. What is coal gasification? Coal gasification is a great process for this country because of the quality of coal that we have. It's a process by which coal is converted into a syngas. It is burned in the absence of oxygen. Syngas is nothing but a combination of carbon monoxide, nitric oxide, sulfur dioxide, and a lot of hydrogen. Hydrogen, as we all know, is very, very important for making iron because hydrogen is the reducing agent that converts the iron oxides, aka the iron ore, into pure iron. The question is, this hydrogen is produced using coal, hence it is called a brown hydrogen. This is coal gasification. Coal gasification is a boon for India, make no mistakes. However, globally, it has not taken off. And it has not taken off for the simple reason that coal gasification comes with some negativities. And the first negativity is environmental pollution. When you gasify coal, where do you take the flues? How do you handle it? Next is the greenhouse emissions. It generates a ton of CO2. So when it generates a ton of CO2, you're becoming more carbon positive in terms of generating carbon dioxide. Waste disposal is a problem. It's limited to low calorific coal. It should not be used for high calorific coal because then you are diminishing the properties of coal. And last but not least, not of water. But for India, it is the second best technology till we go to something called green steel. SSAB, Svenska Stål AB, a steel company that announced its plan to go completely green in terms of manufacturing steel. And that goal is firm by 2026. In 2020, what SAP did was, they said, we will invest about $50 million in a pilot project where we will make green hydrogen out of the flue gases that come out of the steel plant. And using that process, we will create green steel. $50 million probably would have given them 50,000 tons of production. And trust you me today, they are sold out for the next 5 years for whatever they produce. Now here is very important, a lot of people will talk about cost. Is $50 million to produce 50,000 tons steel a humongous capital expenditure? It is not. And I gave you an example. 10 years back, solar power cost in excess of 10 rupees a unit. Today, it costs less than 2 rupees a unit. Toyota Mirai is a car that runs on hydrogen fuel cell in California, not today, for the last 5 years. I own a Toyota Mirai. It has a tank of hydrogen with a capacity of 5.5 kgs, in which you can fill hydrogen 5 kgs, and there are hydrogen fueling stations in California. In a full tank of hydrogen, it gives me about 506 kilometers, to be precise, converting from miles to kilometers. Average cost of hydrogen today is $7. So if average cost is $7, what is the cost per kilometer? The cost per kilometer is less than rupees 6. Assuming your car gives you 12 kilometers average, and the gasoline you buy is 100 rupees a kg, what's the average? Now, is gasoline going from rupees 100 to 150, or is coming down to rupees 50? But for sure, hydrogen will come down from $7 to what they call a 1-1-1 parity. It will be less than $1. If it is less than $1, can you imagine what we are sitting on? Is it a necessity or a myth? The future is green hydrogen. And green hydrogen can be produced in a humongous ways, in a lot of ways. There's a ton of investment. And why do I bring this topic up? Not because of my interest in green hydrogen. It's because the government of India, out of great wisdom, has embarked on a magnanimous project. They've offered $2.3 billion subsidies only for green hydrogen. $2.3 billion of subsidies. Railways announced they will run 150 trains on green hydrogen. So how many types of hydrogen is there? Of course, hydrogen is that super element number 1 in the periodic table. When you boil water in your house, the small bubbles that actually stick to the wall of the container is hydrogen. Hydrogen is anti-aging. The top NBA players in the United States, the top professionals in football, the top professionals in cricket, they take hydrogen therapy. It's very expensive. One capsule of nascent hydrogen can cost you an upside of $140. Hydrogen is a miracle element. Make no mistakes about it. Hydrogen is one that reduces iron oxide to iron in a blast furnace. The question is, we were producing it using a source where we were emitting a lot of carbon dioxide. That's brown hydrogen. Then there's blue hydrogen. We can use natural gas and produce hydrogen. But then that hydrogen also produces carbon dioxide. And if you leave that to the air, it's called blue hydrogen. Then third is turquoise hydrogen, where you actually make, through natural gas, a lot of hydrogen, but then what you do to the carbon dioxide is either you sell it to the industry or you dump it in the rocks, because the rocks absorb carbon dioxide. So ultimately, it's zero emission, and finally, it's green hydrogen, where there's no carbon dioxide. Has it been done? Yes, it's been done. This is a solar farm. You can see the electrolyzer. So there are various ways of doing green hydrogen, PEM, SOEC, solid oxide. I will not go into that. But this is an example of a small farm field. The problem with electricity is, make no mistakes, energy cannot be stored, energy can only be transformed. You switch on a light, the fan moves, what you're doing is converting electrical energy to a rotational energy. Energy cannot be stored is the problem with the solar industry today. You generate electricity, you have to sell it to somebody, somebody consumes. You cannot store it. That's not the case with hydrogen. Using solar, if you generate green hydrogen can be stored as a liquid form or a gas form, and can be used further to generate electricity. That's where the difference is. This is another example of another electrolyzer which is in motion. There is more than 5 gigawatts of electricity being generated using green hydrogen only in Silicon Valley. This is not a test case, this is not a pilot project. The question is, can we do this to the steel industry? And it's very simple. You have flue gases. You take the flue gases, make steam, which you do in a boiler. It's an age-old technology. From the steam, you generate electricity, feed that to the electrolyzer, and the electrolyzer make green hydrogen. Green hydrogen comes back to the blast and gives you the hydrogen that reduces you to pure iron. That's all SASAB did. A $50 million investment, 50,000 tons. And if the hydrogen cost comes down to 111, you see what this can make. The question is, will India be a leader and make 300 million tons of ordinary steel by 2035, or India will be the largest maker of green steel in the world, is a question that we have to understand. Finally, my last topic of the day, innovation, digital printing. Pre-painted steel has been now in the market for about 50 years. It's pretty boring. Blue, Seco red, 9002. There's no interest. What do? And a lot of architects will say, if we had some kind of a product that was more appealing, more aesthetic, then probably we could have done so much more. So digital printing is the norm of the day. What is this? This is a pre-painted, multi-storied complex, but it's printed. How does it look? This is my close-up against it. We talk about low-cost housing. This is low-cost housing. This is where you can do a ton of things with low-cost housing. And this is what India needs. And India needs this. So what is digital printing? Digital printing is pre-painting on metal strips to overcome the issues of gravure printing, for lamination, for sheet-fed printing, and so on and so forth. This is why the goals were achievement, printing any digital image, any high-resolution image, a photo or a computer can be used, so on and so forth. This is how it used to be in the multi-pass stage. This is how it is done on a single stage. Now we have a full-fledged unit working in North America. I will not go into proprietary information because of non-disclosures. Sharing these details were a mess because I had to go through 10 people to take permission. It's working. We have a digital printing setup running in US. The challenge was how to get the inks and coatings right that could sustain the weathering of digital printing. And that's why American Preco did a lot of work. We are successful. We filed 3 patents on it. The current production that is going on is absolutely on American pre-coatings and coatings on digital printing. This is the difference, Gravure 1, Gravure 2, and the rest 2 are digitally printed. We can show you more example. This is on a dot matrix, how the digital printing works, Gravure versus industrial, a typical digital printing section. All you need is about 20 meters, and this is a digital printing line. How does it happen? It happens like this, the live digital printing on the coil. These are coils. I cannot run the video. What a waste of resource. I had to probably fly 4 hours. But I can't run the videos because my Mac's not connecting. But these are videos I could have run for you with permission to show actual digital printing in production. This is an actual coil. Box 1, managing the present. Of course, we have our balance sheets, we've got a fiduciary responsibility towards our shareholders, our stakeholders. We have to manage the present. But then where do you want to get in 2035? And what do you do today to be there in 2035? What do you do? What intermittent steps do you take? I've been on the board of many Fortune 50 companies. And I've seen when you talk about the innovation program, all it talks about is enterprise resource platform, ERP, Six Sigma. That's not innovation. Selectively ignore the past and create the future. If you want to be in 2035, the largest green steel maker in the world, because make no mistakes, if there is a brown tax, the way people thought there'll be no export tax on steel ever in India, do not make that mistake again. Congratulations to all of you. We've become the most populated country day before yesterday. We overtook China. We are officially 1.42 billion people. Do we produce enough goods and services? We are a net importer by miles. When we were a $1 trillion economy, our foreign reserves were $225 billion. We are $3 trillion plus. By any measure of extrapolation linear, we should have been $700 billion. We are at $400 billion. We consume. It's a great news. We also need to produce. And this is India's decade, provided we understand the pledge that we take. if we can take a pledge to do things different, if we can take a pledge and say, yes, we have to look at products and services in a different manner. Tesla is not the most valued company because it's an electric car company. Tesla is the most valued company because it's the most innovative product on the market. It's the most safest product in the market. It holds its value. So can we do green steel? Of course. And now, it's not my choice, it's not your choice. The government of India says $2.3 billion subsidies available for green hydrogen. That's the only way we have to look at it. And it's possible. We have landmass. We've got great people, great corporations. If I were to ask you, name 4 great steel companies in India. Any shout outs? 4 great steel companies in India. Tata's, Jindal's, ArcelorMittal's, the steel authorities, right? Now, name 4 great companies of steel in China. 1, Bao, yes. Number 2, you won't get to 4. Is the message clear? It's not about numbers. It's not about a billion, million tons. It's about what you do and how you innovate. A few words about American Precoat. We are the only electro-galvanizing steel manufacturer from here until France. The last electro-galvanized steel manufacturer is in Korea. There's no electro-galvanizing steel. We do it. We've localized 36 projects, 36 projects. We did the ECU, electronic controller unit for airbags. We did the engine gaskets. We did backplate for TVs. And we've done umpteen number of jobs in localizing. And people were surprised. Where did you come from? How did you do? The question is, electro-galvanizing steel is not about steel. It's about chemistry. I don't know why they call it steel. Because you buy steel, you don't make steel. You convert the surface of the steel. And I said, look, if you read your history well, Magnitogorsk in Russia has been doing electro-galvanizing pre-painting for the last 35, 40 years. Am I correct? We do it. We had the second largest, Dwarka had the second largest market share of coil coatings in North America, and we were very proud to be associated with that. We sold that business to Axalta DuPont in 2018. So we are proud to have a series of patents and IPRs in coil coating, futuristic, in steel making. We not only make paints and coatings, we also make steel. So we understand what a steel plant is, what it takes to be green, what it takes to be innovative, what it takes to be successful, and what it takes to dream to be where you want to be in 2030, and what it takes to do today to be where you want to be in 2030. This is a memento we presented to Minister of Steel last November. He was glad to see that. He said, I'm very proud that finally something that was 100% import substituted is now produced in India. So let's take a pledge. Export duty was just a knock on the door. We cannot keep on polluting the atmosphere just because we need to have a good balance sheet. It will not work. And the day we have a brown tax imposed, I'll get 1 million calls again as to how did you know. It's not rocket science. And we can do it. Coal gasification is a boon for India because that generates hydrogen. We have low calorific coal here. The question is to graduate, to learn from coal gasification and to graduate to green hydrogen. We don't have to copy the world. We have to do things different. We have always been doing things differently. It's a pledge. He wanted to create a museum of poverty. What would you want to create? And what would you want to leave for your children? I lay these questions open for this great seminar, a great summit for the rest of the day. Thanks for listening. Thanks for coming. I'll be here all day. Feel free to ask me any questions. I'd love to learn something from you and have a great conference. Thank you so much.